All right, dope. We are live. I'm here with Scott Crawley, owner, operator of Sharp Focus Creative Academy, the film school and production company that I have worked with for the last 6 months. Without this guy, this wouldn't be possible. And his partner, David Craig. You guys have taken me to the next level, and my love of film and my love of movies. And without you, I don't know where I'd be. I appreciate everything you've done for me. I love you guys to death, and thank you very much for being here.
Well, thank you for the kind words, Joe. I appreciate it. Please continue. Go on. No, man, it's been great. Like I'm really happy that you ended up coming into our lives, and it's been, that's the beautiful thing about the school is that I would say 99% of the students that come through end up becoming like our friends, not just people that we've worked with. So thank you for having me here, man. I really appreciate it. I'm excited.
Of course.
Get this going.
Yeah, man. I want to touch on your background first. I know that you, like myself and like many others out there, were not happy with their everyday, regular life, and you wanted to do something more, and you know that you love film. And so I want to touch on that, how your journey out here started, and then the process of Sharp Focus, what you guys do. So in case there's someone out there that wants to go to film school or wants to have some recording work done for them, they can get your information.
Sure.
And then I want to touch on all the weird shit that we're both into.
One-handed clap. I'm excited.
One-handed clap. Dope. All right,
years and years of masturbation, my friends.
Fucking do this.
Sorry, you can cut that out right
now. No, I'm leaving that in. That's not getting cut out ever.
Okay.
All right. Let's. All right. So tell me about how things started for young Scott.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I mean, like most people, you grow up and you like certain movies that just really captivate you. And, I grew up in a small town. Well, it was a small town when I grew up, but it's South Bend, Indiana. It's getting a lot larger now, of course, with Notre Dame is, the popularity of that. And I think everybody now knows South Bend because of Mayor Pete. Mayor Pete Buttigieg. So anyway, I grew up in a small town, and my grandfather always had the latest and greatest technology. He was the first guy to have like a gigantic VHS camcorder, right? And I was kind of obsessed with that. Like he let me use it at a very, very young age, and I just started making like little videos with my friends and my cousins. But I had no idea that this was actually a real career path. Being in a small town in the Midwest, you see this stuff on TV and on the big screen, and even if you see like Hollywood, the Hollywood sign, or you think of Los Angeles, I don't know, maybe it was just me, but I had zero confidence that that was a possibility for me. I thought I was just going to grow up in my hometown, find a job, retire from there, and that was it. So I had always, like I said, I had a passion for filmmaking, but they were just silly little videos with my friends. I went to college, begrudgingly. My mom, kind of bribed me to go to college, like begged me and said, I will pay for it, or try to help you pay for it. Luckily, I had some scholarships and stuff that helped me pay to go to college, but I went to IU, the South Bend campus, and I have a bachelor's degree, and unfortunately, it, in my opinion, is not worth the paper that it's printed on. It's not a degree in anything that I'm using, so I ended up getting a job at the local Hummer plant. It's called AM General. It's probably the best job in South Bend that I know of or knew of at the time. It's still kind of going through some changes right now because, of course, they're not making as many Hummers as they used to.
Right.
The military is pretty stockpiled. So there's some contractual issues.
Oh, you were doing military Hummers. You weren't doing like the ones that people just regular people buy.
We would do all of them.
Okay.
So every Hummer that you've ever seen in your life, aside from H3, the H3s, which are not very highly regarded anyway, I think they were built in Louisiana, but every military Humvee, H1, H2, Arnold Schwarzenegger would come there or buy his Humvees from there. Like he would tour the plant. It was dope. Probably the best job in town when I lived there. I mean, if people found out that I worked at AM General, they would like beg me, hey, can I give you my resume and can you give it to HR? And it was kind of crazy, because look, I'm not knocking working at a factory environment. It's just not for my personality. Like I have a little bit more of a I don't dare I say creative personality. That's probably not the best word I should use, but either way, like just doing the same monotonous thing, typing a camouflage code into a computer, drilling a hole, putting something into it, and then sending it down the line. We would build like 70 Hummers a day. So all day long, a Hummer comes up, you do something, it takes you 2 minutes, and then the next one moves along. That just was not conducive for my brain. And so I was pretty depressed for a little while, even though it paid very, very well. Like, I mean, ridiculously well for people who, you didn't have to have a degree to work there. I mean, heck, my dad is the one that got me into the Hummer plant, and I think he got a GED, and he ended up making pretty good money by the time he had retired. So anyway, aside from financial stability, I had a small production company in South Bend. We would do a lot of weddings and commercials and stuff like that, but maybe some music videos here and there, but it wasn't exactly my bread and butter for the year round. I mean, winter months would come around. Of course, there's not many weddings. And so AM General provided financial security, but mentally I was unhappy. And I'll never forget the day that my boss came up to me and he said, "Crawley, you blink your eyes and you're going to retire from here just like your old man." And I will never forget that moment because I immediately had a flash in my brain of me putting a shotgun barrel in my mouth and pulling the trigger with my toe. And again, I am not making fun of factory life. I mean, it is a great job for a lot of people in this country. It just, my brain it did not mesh well. So I went home that day, I talked to my wife, and she knew that this was my passion. And she just said, "Hey, let's move out to LA." So we did. And even though I thought I knew what I was doing, coming to LA, I realized, oh wow, me owning a production company in Indiana, I realized there's still a lot I need to learn. So I was like, well, let me go to film school. I looked around LA, all these different film schools, different programs, and I settled on going to Los Angeles Film School. I think I originally signed up for a 2-year program, but it was kind of going slow for me. We had to do a lot of elective classes that were, that I had learned stuff in my IU degree.
That was the issue I had, and one of the main reasons why I didn't go there. They were doing stuff that I've already done in multiple. I did it in high school. I did it in college.
Right.
I'd have to do it again, and then on top of it, it was like 150, 200 grand for nothing. It was ridiculous. So
yeah, and thank God, after I had left, I had heard that then they started making you the first month that you were there, you had to take like Microsoft Word and like Excel and all of these kind of things, and it's like, you're spending months of my education to go to film school. If you don't know how to use Microsoft Word before then, you can learn it on your own. You don't need to spend a month or two or however much time that they were spending on it.
Right.
But so I originally signed up for a 2-year degree or associate's degree, and I think I ended up taking an accelerated program because I just wanted to get to it. I was 30 years old by the time I moved to LA, and I had already known most of the stuff, but I wanted to get to the meat and potatoes of the filmmaking side. So I joined the accelerated program, and I still got an associate's degree, but again, any degree, accredited degree or whatever you want to call it in the entertainment industry is not worth the paper.
It's not needed either. Yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't know that at the time. That's the problem. You come out here, especially if you're not a native Angelino.
I think most people don't realize that, and if anyone's listening to this right now, you do not need a 4-year college degree
or a 2-year
degree to get into any portion of the entertainment business, whether it be acting, stunts, producing, filmmaking, directing.
Writing,
you don't need
anything.
any of these things.
It is all about like who unfortunately, first. It's not really a meritocracy. I wish it was, but that's just the way things go. It is really about who you know and what you have already done that you can show that you are capable of. So having a good portfolio if you're a photographer or a writer, or if you want to be in the actual production side of things like a camera operator or an editor, you have to have a good reel. That's all it is, and who you know. So anyway, I graduated, one of the top of my class, and, I'm paying for it. I will be paying for it for a very long time. I don't know if I should mention how much I pay a month, but I throw the number out there quite a bit. It's like $728 a month, and, look, they never really helped me get a job. I'm not going to trash the school, though, okay? That's not what I'm trying to do here. I'm not going to lie. I learned quite a bit of stuff that is very relevant to what I know now and what helps me get work now. The problem is, though, if you put that on a teeter-totter, is what I learned worth how much I'm paying for it and will be paying for it? And that answer is a hard no. So, after I graduated, I thought, oh, well, I got top of my class. I thought that something wasn't going to fall into my lap or I was going to find something immediately. And I ended up having to call in a lot of favors. Luckily, I made a good impression with a lot of people, just hard work. And eventually somebody called in a favor, got me a job on a couple of sets. And then I was working a lot of hours, and I'm not going to try to talk anybody out of trying to get into production, but if you are going to be on set and that's your main goal, you need to know that they're going to be like 15, 18-hour days sometimes, but a 12-hour day is I haven't heard of much underneath that.
Yeah, no, anything I've been on has been way more than that, and it's a lot of, unless you're, on the upper end of things, it's a lot of bitch work.
It is.
But that's okay. If you know that this is what you want to do, bitch work's not bad. You got to get your foot in the pool. You got to stick the toe in, and that's the way to do it. And anyone who's doing that right now, awesome, more power to you.
Sure.
And if you're somewhere and you were like me, because I was doing real estate and insurance, fucking hated my life, man. And I randomly came across a soundbite of Joe Rogan. Like, it was like a motivational thing about Joe Rogan, and he specifically was like, he's like, what do you want to be? You want to be some guy sitting in an office selling insurance? And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? And then I was like, fuck it, I'm done. Packed my shit up. No, I'm sorry, I lost my job first. And my boss pulled me into the office and he was like, if I gave you $1 million, what would you do tomorrow? And I was like, I would go to Hollywood and do stunts and try to get into film. And I happened to own a business in San Diego, and that provided me the opportunity to move that to the West Coast. And just through the people I knew through martial arts, kind of got my foot in the door. And then I realized when I was trying to make my first short movie that there was just a whole wealth of knowledge that I didn't have. And what I had in mind, I couldn't verbally or intelligently express to other people to help that, vision become reality.
Exactly.
And when I started looking at schools, it was insane. I had to do, I went to UCLA, LA Film School, and New York Film Academy, and they were all pretty much the same issue across the board. Crazy expensive for no reason. Wouldn't accept any credits I had in my past, and there was no guarantee of any real help after graduation.
Right.
And I guess through my searches and stuff on the computer, it populated the ad for Sharp Focus Creative Academy, and I happened to reach out to you guys. And bar none, like, you guys are the best bang for your buck when it comes to a California film school. And I know with the restrictions in COVID right now, things are a little weird for everyone, especially you guys. And you guys you have discussions of doing an online program.
We're actually in the process of developing it now. It's probably going to launch before the end of the year, sometime in late fall. So we are getting ready to start filming. The program is already written now, so it just takes a lot of time. It's a lot of development time up front. You just don't start recording and then because you've been in my classes. It is very conversational, back and forth, and I can't just hit record and teach the way that I do in person on camera and then upload that online.
Right, and it's also very hands-on in class too.
Yeah.
But if there's anyone listening right now and you have the hankering to try to get into film, but if you're one of my friends and you live in South Florida, if you're one of my friends and you live in New York, and you just don't have that available to you, there will be something for you in the future to kind of get your beak wet and see if this is something you want to do.
Yeah.
And
thank
you
man.
guys are phenomenal. I fucking love you guys. Like, without you, thankfully I have the skills for stunts. My acting's not that bad, so I get some work here and there, but eventually my body's going to give out.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not Jackie Chan. I'm not going to be doing stunts till my 60s.
Right.
And I wanted to have an extra layer of protection that would allow me to be in the industry, and you guys have provided that for me.
You really do have to have that now. I mean, back, and we've said it before, we'll say it again. Like, everybody knows the phrase, what is it? A jack of all trades is a master of none. But the key word of that is it's an old phrase, right? That used to be a very common thing, and it made sense a lot in the 80s and 90s and before that. But now with this digital age, you really have to you kind of have to be a Swiss Army knife, so to speak, because something can change any day now. Like one method of doing something like celluloid transitioned over into digital editing. There's so many things that are changing now. And so if you were an original editor on celluloid film, when that ended up kind of going to the wayside, what does that person do? You know what I mean? They have to now learn something new. And not only just that, I mean, it just helps. For me as an employer, when I hire someone, it really helps me out to say, oh, Joe, he's good at camera, and you edit, and you might be able to do some, Photoshop work as well. That helps me out, so I can just be like, oh, let me delegate this stuff to this person. I don't have to hire a separate person for each individual little job, right?
So just to clarify, in case anyone's wondering, what is the Sharp Focus course touch on? The course that you and Dave both teach, what does the course touch on?
Okay. So, well, let me explain how I got into teaching, because I originally never thought I would be a teacher. Everybody always says, oh, those who can't do teach, which, in some cases is true, but in this case
But let's also hold back, because you have done, and before we get to what you teach or how you got to teaching, let's touch on some of the things that you have done. That way people know you're the real fucking deal.
Okay, cool, man. That's great. I like where your head's at. So aside from trying to work my way up through, as you quoted earlier, bitch work on set, everybody starts out as a PA. You're getting water, you're getting yelled at, you're getting coffee, you're making copies, you're doing everything that it needs to be done, right? And it helps you see all the different departments. But if you want to eventually focus on camera department or whatever it may be, production department, working for a director, assistant director, all that, you eventually have to narrow your path down. I ended up kind of getting burnt out on realizing how long it takes to climb that ladder. And I would see people who have been a grip or an electric for 20 years. And I'm not saying all grip and electrics are like this, but there is a common joke in the industry, functioning alcoholics sitting on the back of a grip truck, just waiting to be told what to do. They're not allowed to touch anything else.
Yeah, the union really doesn't allow them to do much.
That was my big mistake. The first time I was on a big set, I was like, let's do this. How can I help you? What can I do to help you? And they're like, you're not in my department. Get the fuck out of here. And I'm thinking what the heck? I'm not doing anything right now. I could help you, but I didn't realize. I was so green. I didn't understand that that's not how a set functions. So anyway, I would be gone in the morning at 5 a.m. If my call time was in Manhattan Beach and I live in Burbank, I'd have to be out the door really early, and I'd work a 12 or 15 hour day, and I would come home and it's dark and my wife has already eaten dinner. And when I found out, we started to think about having kids, and I'm thinking, I'm never going to see my kids. I don't want to be that father that is never home, right? So I had an opportunity to transition into editing, which I also knew how to do pretty well. It was one of my, in my skill set. So not only did I do camera work, and I knew how to set up a C-stand, and I knew how to do a lot of the physical labor on set, I've been editing for a long time. And so a friend of mine hooked me up and got me a job as an assistant editor at a post house. And the hours were much better. Now, granted, I wasn't quite as physical, so I put on a little bit of weight, sitting behind a computer all day. But that's just the nature of the beast, right? Right. So I was working at a post house. It was about a 45-minute drive. I lived in Burbank, and it was in Culver City. So I'd take my motorcycle every day. And a friend of mine who was actually a teacher, one of my instructors at LA Film School, we had kind of bonded. I think he realized I was a little bit older than the rest of the kids in class, and he understood that I had some wisdom under my belt. So anyway, he hit me up and he said, hey, I'm working at a school here in Burbank. Would you like to come teach with me? And I said, teach? I mean, what do you want me to teach? I've never taught anything. And he said, don't worry about it. I think you've got the right personality. He offered me more pay, and it was a 5-minute drive from my house. And I said, you know what? I'm going to give it a shot.
It's a huge upgrade.
Yeah, exactly. And so, even though I wasn't going to be doing actual industry work, we was working on some pretty big projects at the post house that I was working at.
What are some of the projects you were touching on?
Back then, it was like Amazing Spider-Man, like the new reboot. With what was his name? Not Topher Grace.
Tobey Maguire?
Andrew Garfield. Andrew Garfield.
Is that where you met Ilram?
No, I actually met Ilram at a Halloween party one time, and we were all in this giant limo.
Was he dressed like Spider-Man?
No, he was. He should have been.
For those of you that don't know, Ilram Choi was one of the stunt actors for, I think it was The Amazing Spider-Man.
He was like the guy in the suit for The Amazing Spider-Man.
Yeah, and he's a badass. He's an awesome dude.
He's done a ton of stuff. He's one of the bigger. He did a lot of stunts for Avatar and G.I. Joe, and if you look him up on IMDb, he's a stud.
He's the deal. I don't want to cut you off. Sorry.
No, that's great. So we, Black Swan. I'm trying to think. This was like in 2012, 2011. I think 2011. So like some of the bigger movies we worked on was like The Amazing Spider-Man, Black Swan, Ghost Rider. A couple of the Ghost Rider movies. Battleship, John Carter. I mean, there was quite a few, even like Spartacus, like the TV show and stuff like that. So there was a lot of work coming in. But like, when somebody offers me, I saw how slow it took to get promoted.
Right.
And I say, hey, somebody's paying me way more and it's a shorter drive. It was just a time in my life I said, you know what, I'm going to try it. I get to work with a good friend of mine. And so I did it, and I'll never forget, like the first day I taught, like I'm shaking, right? But it was stuff that I knew how to do. Teaching intro to editing, intro to directing, all this kind of stuff. So I knew the curriculum. I just had never spoke to a group of people that are all like paying attention to what I'm saying.
It's different. It's a different muscle. You have to, you had to massage that and develop that.
For sure. And so anyway, long story short, within a week or so, like, I mean, I had, for lack of a better term, had them eating out of the palm of my hand in a sense of like, I loved it and they enjoyed what I was saying. And I never got bored of teaching the same things to people because I truly enjoy, I like to see that light bulb pop over someone's head. When you show them how to do something that's not really that difficult, you just have to be confident in saying, oh, I'm going to try to learn this. A lot of people are afraid of new things, which I get. I can be that way too. But if you show somebody how simple it can really be to do this, and if they really grasp onto it, you just see like a overflow of creative, like, passion. In that way, and I just really enjoyed that, and I was thinking, hey, what the heck, this is something that I could see doing for a long time. And the good thing is also on the side, I was still producing. We did a feature film that won a ton of festivals. I was working on client projects like commercials, music videos, live events. I mean, if some place had like a concert going on and they needed multicam setup, I had done that before. So I had my own production company as well. And so not only was I doing, I was also teaching, and that was very fulfilling for me. Now, granted, I didn't have a lot of major celebrities in the projects that I was working on at that time. I think Alfred Molina was in, he was probably the bigger celebrity that I had worked with in our feature documentary Walk On. But aside from that, people would say, hey, who's the biggest celebrity you're working with right now? And at that time in my life, that's
such a shitty, that's such a Hollywood shit thing.
Right. It's a very amateur question, right? And look, I get it, because when if I go to a high school and I do some sort of presentation or a talk and I field questions afterwards, anybody have any questions? One of the guaranteed questions is going to ask me, who's the biggest celebrity you've worked with?
But that's from people that aren't in the industry,
right?
But that question still comes up from people that are in the industry. They don't really care. Like your entire status and everything about you is based on who you're working with, what you're working on. It's sometimes it's really horrible.
I think it depends on who you're talking to. I mean, I could imagine people, maybe like less experienced actors would want to know that stuff. But anybody that really has been working in the industry for a long time, most people really kind of get over that. And they see, and not to say that big name actors aren't talented, but if you've worked on enough sets, you really start to see, wow, okay, of course Tom Cruise is talented, but you start to see people behind the camera and doing other things that are also insanely talented.
Yeah, without them, things wouldn't be anywhere where they are.
And honestly, some of my bragging rights that I have, if I name drop, it's not going to be somebody that the common society would know. It's like a DP that I really admire, or like I worked with this director or this guy that I hang out with on a regular basis. He wrote like these amazing movies, right? So a lot of people don't really think about that, but yeah, after a while, the celebrity aspect of it does kind of wear off. So I mean, again, we're not knocking that by any means, but that's something to kind of keep in mind.
There's going to be a lot of people that are like, why are you going to film school? Why do you have your buddy come in, to push this film school? You can learn everything on YouTube.
That is true.
And you can. There's a lot you can learn on YouTube, but and I know the answers. I'm going to let you answer this because it's.
That's a great question, and you are right. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I will look into these cameras and tell you every single thing that we teach. I mean, aside from the anecdotal stuff, there's a lot of like, warnings like, hey, don't do this or don't say this. You got to make sure. There's a lot of anecdotal stories and tales of, what's that called? Not like a warning. There's some sort of cautionary tale. So a lot of these like cautionary tales is not something that you would find online, but literally everything technical you could probably find for free somewhere online. The point is, though, you don't know what you don't know. And I mean, I could just look up like how to edit on YouTube. It's a wealth of knowledge, don't get me wrong, but trying to sift through the bullshit, there are so many people out there trying to teach these things, and you don't know which one of these people actually know what they're doing, or they're just kind of like, they think they know what they're doing.
All right. And there's a lot of information out there they do it, it looks good, but it's technically wrong. And there's a lot of, they don't teach about destructive editing and stuff like that.
Right. Or something that is super applicable to like social media editing and like putting something online, but the buck stops there. It doesn't really talk about like, hey, how do you preserve this for actually broadcast distribution? What do I need to know in terms of like color correction and exposure and audio decibel meters? You can't just be a run and gun editor. Like, it's not the Wild West unless your distribution window is only the internet, because the internet doesn't really have any regulations. I can go film. The most popular thing people do now is like, I figured out how to film slow motion on my camera. Let me get a hot girl, and I'm going to go get those little smoke sticks, and let me just go down in like some sort of like dry river basin, like the LA River, and I'm going to have some hot girl like spinning around with these like colored smoke sticks. Everybody's been doing it. Yep. Cool. It looks great. It looks cinematic. It's good content. But what do you do with that? How do you monetize that? I put that online, great, but are people buying that from you? So really trying to figure out how you can take your skills and whittle it down into something that can actually be sold or distributed or working with a client. Those are the things that I feel like I missed out on when I went to film school. So when I started my own film school, Sharp Focus, I really looked at what I learned in my time in film school and on all of my experience. What was the most important? What's the fat that we can trim? Like, this is all stuff that doesn't really need to be memorized. Eventually, if you want to learn it, great. But so I tried to combine all that stuff and then also sprinkle in a little bit of like how to deal with a client, because they're not always confident in like what you're doing. They don't know what you do, so they can be a little bit nervous as well.
Right. And they also don't know what they want. It's kind of your job to hold their hand and massage their ego a little bit and give them way more than what they're asking.
Exactly. So sorry, I went off on a little tangent there. To answer your question, though, what we do at Sharp Focus is, I'm not going to lie, you're not going to come out of there a master of any single subject, right? You're not going to come out and immediately start directing feature films. It does not work that way. What we do is take the entire process from development, pre-production, principal photography, post-production, distribution, and really show you like a bird's eye view and let you actually attempt to do every single one of those things, and hopefully you see what resonates with you. Full disclosure, most people come in thinking that they want to do one thing, and then when they learn that there's all these other aspects to it, I would say the vast majority of people, when they exit the program, they have a different goal in mind of what they want to do. It's not always the case, but I would say the majority do.
Right.
So it's really just to help people figure out what they're good at. So for the people that are out there, like, I feel this passion or this creativity inside of me. I'm not exactly sure what I'm good at. This is the purpose of it, is to help you kind of narrow down which path that you should take. So like for you, you as an example, I mean, your directorial mind is kind of impressive to me. And I'm not trying to blow smoke up your ass,
Appreciate
but like,
that.
but you can even admit, like, maybe your weak area is editing.
Yeah.
And that's good, though, that you are in touch with yourself enough to say, this is what I like, this is what I'm good at. I can freely admit that I am not good at this. You know, and sometimes it's more important to really be able to admit what you're not good at.
Right.
And you then at that point you ask yourself, do I like it and do I want to be good at it? Because just because that might not be your strong suit now. If you do love the editing process, you just need to practice more, and eventually you can do it.
Right.
But
to an extent, like I'm okay with understanding how to edit, and I'll get better the more I do it.
Sure.
But let's say After Effects. I fucking hate After Effects.
Same here.
So I'm never gonna get good at it. I'm never even gonna put the time into it. I'd rather double down on something that I'm good at and become that much better than waste my time on something that I know that I'm not really gonna use and that I could farm out to somebody else.
Absolutely. That is the smartest way to approach it. And I'm the same way. That's why you're not going to see me teaching an After Effects class at Sharp Focus. I probably could, but I would fumble my way through it. And I know enough about After Effects. If I need to do something, I know enough, like, I know what an alpha track or a track mat is or something like that. So then I know what to Google or look up. But if you don't know what a track mat is, or a motion, or rotoscoping, if you've never even heard that word in your life, then you don't know to Google it.
Right.
So that's the thing, and I don't have any desire to learn it. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not valuable, because there's a lot of money in, knowing After Effects and all that kind of stuff. But I think the key of that is not only just recognizing your weak spots, but also understanding, is this something that I want to make better, or fine-tune my skills? And if not, then I wouldn't waste your time on that. Like you said, you focus on what you're good at, double down on that, and then you hire someone or collaborate with somebody that can help you out, and then you can help them in some way, shape, or form. Maybe monetarily, or if you're really just trying to form a crew. A lot of times you got to do stuff for free for a considerable amount of time when you first start out in this industry.
Oh, I still do free work all the time. Yeah. And because you have to do free work because that's how you get your foot in the door. But if this is what you love to do, the word free doesn't really come in mind. Like, you're having fun. Like, you're having fun with friends. You don't even think about or even want to get paid for it unless it's something outrageous. Yeah,
there comes a time, though, where you really have to, say, okay, I've been doing this for free for a while. Let me, you got to have, an expected time frame for that. But like you said, if it's your passion, do it for free, not only because that's what you have to do, but also you're not going to be able to build a reel.
Yeah.
That you can show somebody. Like, if you're trying to get a job and say, hey, I am a good editor, they're going to say, okay, show me what you've edited. If you don't have anything to show them, or if it's trash, both of those answers right there are not going to get you hired.
Yeah, I had the same thing with stunts. I'm an advanced martial artist, but I had no footage to show anyone. Right. It was a pain in the ass. And it's weird that you need a reel for every single thing you do. You need a directing reel, a stunt reel, an acting reel, maybe a comedy or a dramatic acting reel. Then you need an editing reel. That's the only way to get work, and other than, and the agent helps, but even to get an agent, you need these things.
Exactly.
So yeah, free work is something that has to be done. And if you have a friend that's like, oh, I have to do this and I have to do it free, and you're talking shit about them, you're a dick. Yeah. Like, you're a dick. Don't be that person. Don't shit on them. Help them out. This is a weird place to try to get work. And it's just a weird industry. Yeah, super weird stuff goes on here, and
then you get to a point where you refuse to do free work anymore. Like, I've been past that for a long time. The only time I will really go out of my way and do something for free is if I'm passionate about the project. But I mean, let's just face it, though, you're going to get to a point where you just don't have time to do that, and then And then you still have people, though, it's going to overlap. You're going to have a lot of people still coming to you, hey, I need your help with this, I need your help with this. And you don't want to be an asshole and say, no, away with you, But you do have to get to a point where you struggle with saying, I'm sorry, it's not that I don't like you as a person, it's not that I don't want to help you, I just really don't have time to do that. And that's a hard thing for people that's a hard threshold for people to figure out how to cross.
Yeah, and it's hard to say to somebody too. It's hard to hear from someone, and it's hard to say to somebody.
It is.
Let me ask you this. What was the film that you saw either growing up or, but had been growing up, what was the film you saw when you were growing up that changed your life and made you realize that this was the industry that you wanted to be in?
Okay, this is either going to help me or it's going to hurt me, my reputation. You already know this, of course, right? But I am Jean-Claude Van Damme, #1 fan, like to the point where it's almost creepy. I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't have any sort of restraining order against it. Yeah. But when I was a kid, I loved Van Damme movies, and to the point where I would sit there and pause it anytime that there was an edit in a fight scene, because I just like you, I have a martial arts background, and I was just obsessed with how they did it. And I would see like one camera angle where he jumps and spins around, and then it cuts to another angle of just the bad guy's face, and all you see is a foot kick his face. And I'm thinking to myself, like, I can do this. Like, show me, I'll film myself doing a jump kick, and I'm this far away from the person that I'm trying to kick. But as long as the camera is behind that person, it closes the distance, and you can't really tell that I was 4 feet away from him. And then we just cut into a close-up of you sitting on a couch, and I'm just laying down right here, and the person is filming it, and I'm like, okay, you recording? Yeah, you're good? Okay. And I would slowly like kick him in the face. You do it 10 times or whatever, and then you pick and choose which one looked the best. So I would say Double Impact is my favorite Van Damme movie, and that really, and also that's another one that another reason why I like that movie is he played twin brothers, and it fascinated me how they had to film it from one angle. So when they show an over the shoulder and this one twin, Chad or Alex, and then you see the back of a person's head that's supposed to be the other twin, and it really just made my mind pop.
What about the scene where they're next to each other in the same frame?
Yeah, so that, of course, it doesn't really hold up that well these days. If you watch it again, you're like,
I mean, 20 years ago when it came out, it looked fucking phenomenal.
Yeah. So I knew, just looking at that, it was split screen. That's not what fascinated me. It was like, oh, when they filmed this scene of them sitting at a table talking, they had to film it twice at completely different times, different hairstyle, different outfit. And then they had to have somebody that looked like him from behind, who's actually my friend, the guy that was Van Damme's body double. He's a buddy of mine. He runs the Burbank Film Festival. It's kind of crazy. I went to his house to pick up my trophy for the Burbank Film Festival. We got first place in the feature documentary, and I was at his house, and I looked down, and I saw the script, like an actual script of Double Impact. And I was like, oh my God. And he told me all about, how he was the reverse angle body double, so the hair and all that kind of stuff. He didn't have to do any kicks or anything. It was just like for the over the shoulders. But I think that really sparked my brain in terms of like trying to understand how a movie is actually filmed.
Is there a movie out there that resonates with you on like an emotional level that like just touches you?
Yeah, Back to the Future, the original, of course. I mean, I think the whole trilogy is amazing, but Back to the Future, the first one, I'm a sucker for time travel anyway, but that particular movie just, it's interesting to think about if you were able to go back in time and he accidentally like messes up and his own mom ends up getting a crush on him.
Right.
And that is awkward. That's like the most conflicting drama you can ever even really think about.
Well, they had a hard time selling it because of that.
Yeah, and I mean emotional conflict. A lot of people think, oh, conflict, we're talking about fighting in combat. Situational conflict and emotional conflict is way, way more important in my opinion when you're storytelling.
And I love Back to the Future. We've talked about this in depth multiple times, but I know that you love it so much that there's a portion of the class that's dedicated to that opening scene.
That's right. That's right. I forgot about that. When we go through the opening scene, and you could even turn the audio down and not hear anything, and within like 3 minutes, you can deduct like 80 different things about what this movie is about. Like, Doc, there's stolen plutonium, and he's a scientist, a mad scientist.
And there's no words. There's no words in that opening scene, yet it paints such a specific picture of what's going to go on.
Right. Aside from Marty when he walks in, Doc, anybody home?
Oh, yeah, that's
but
it.
you don't even see his face. So that's why I'm saying if you mute it, all it shows is the door open up. He puts the key under the mat, and you see shoes, like tennis shoes, and a skateboard and a backpack. You don't even see Marty's face. So if you don't see him and you don't hear his voice, how do you know that he's a teenager? Because of the shoes and the backpack and the skateboard, how do you know he's not breaking into this guy's house? Because they visually show you that he put the key under the mat. You know what I mean? There's just so many visual storytelling tropes in that. That's why I love that movie so much.
Do you think that opening scene was filmed with Michael J. Fox, or do you think it was Eric Stoltz?
That's a good question.
For those of you that don't know, about half the movie was filmed with a different actor before Michael J. Fox came in. Just the tone of the movie didn't hold up well. The actor they used was, if you've ever seen Anaconda, the redheaded guy in Anaconda who gets his throat stabbed, it was that actor, Eric Stoltz.
I think he was also in like
Mask.
And then Memphis Belle, was he in that too, or maybe not?
He might have been one of the.
Yeah, he's a prominent actor,
He's
and
a great actor.
He's good. So that's not why he was fired. Like you had said, I think it just didn't.
It was the tone. They wanted like a comedic tone, and he brought more of a seriousness to the role.
But you bring up a good question, because that footage might have been filmed with him, and they just said, hey, it doesn't show his face, so we can continue to use it. That's interesting. I never thought about that.
I wonder how angry he is, because it's not like it's just like a movie that like he got fired from.
It's one of the biggest movies ever.
It's one of the biggest movies ever. He's gotta. There has to be some sort of like hatred.
Yeah. Bless his heart, though. I mean, I think he's a great actor, but there has to be many nights that he wept in the shower, with a bottle of Jack Daniels, like, what did I do wrong?
I felt that it breaks my heart, and it's such a common thing that happens here in LA too.
The other thing is, and this is going on a crazy tangent, Will Smith, this is
The Matrix.
I know. He was originally supposed to play Neo in The Matrix, and he turned it down to do Wild Wild West.
Yeah.
Man,
Kicking
he's
himself
got it.
in the ass over
Yeah,
there.
for sure.
Do you think if he had done The Matrix, that Keanu Reeves' career wouldn't have flourished the way it did?
Yes, I do agree. I do think that. I'm not saying he would not have a career, but I think The Matrix was a real big.
It turned him into an
springboard.
action star, right?
Yeah, it did.
Because I think he did Johnny Mnemonic and something else that was like kind of bullshit, but nothing major. Matrix took him to a whole different level.
It did, absolutely, in terms of just being a household name as well. Yeah, that is a big turning point.
Fuck.
Yeah.
I'd hate. I knock on wood that never happens with anything I have to do. Fuck, man. I also want to touch on some of the paranormal experiences that you've had back in. Was it in Indiana that it happened?
Yeah. So, if I may, let me preface this first by saying, a lot of people that I know that talk about their paranormal.
How are we good on that?
Yeah, it looks all right.
Okay.
A lot of people when they talk about paranormal experiences, at least when I talk to people about it, they have a tendency to, this place I had a ghost happen to, and this place this happened, and this place. I've always been a believer in this kind of stuff, but I have never actually experienced anything except for one location in my entire life. And this was a rental house that I had, I want to say early 2000s, like from like 2000 to like 2004. I had lived there, and it was normal. It was pretty normal at first, but there was a certain time where and my bedroom was in the basement, and I had a couple of roommates that lived upstairs in the main floor, and it all started with just hearing weird things downstairs, and I'd be in bed at 2 a.m, and I would hear like running back and forth in the house and slamming doors. And I would just be like, it's 2 a.m. What the hell are you guys doing up there?
Right.
So I would get up and I'd go up and all the lights are off. I thought they were fucking with me. And I would go and knock on their door and open the door, and they're in bed and appearing like, what are you talking about? What's going on? And I'm like, what are you guys, who's up here fucking around? And I thought they were playing a joke.
And there was no animals, no cats, no dogs,
no cats.
raccoons.
We did have a cat for a little while, but it was definitely not. Like, the cat would sleep down in my bed anyway, so that wouldn't have been upstairs. And, you know, a lot of people say, well, what if it's just the heating ducts or the air conditioning ducts, like, you know, contracting? And I know what that sounds like. It's kind of like when you take, like, an empty 2-liter bottle and, you know, you can kind of, I know the difference. And, of course, slamming doors. So that started, and I just chalked it up to, like, look, either they're joking with me and trying to mess with me, but they genuinely appeared to be, like, woken up out of the middle of a sleep, you know, a deep sleep, when I would knock on their door, open it up, turn the light on. So that started. Then, you know, I'd start to just feel like, you know, you see something out of the peripheral of, you know, the corner of your eye, like, I'm looking this way, but I can still see you here.
Right.
I would see somebody there, and I think it's a roommate, and I would turn and look, and it would move. And I'd be like, what is going on, right? So, you know, I chalked it up to maybe, like, something in the corner of my eye. There were cold spots in the house. Like, I'm talking like you'd walk in 2 feet, like you feel your nips just get hard. And you're like, what the fuck is going on, right? And then I think the real first time that we knew something was going on, I was cutting someone's hair. I was a makeshift barber back in Indiana.
Master of all trades.
Yes, that's right. There you go. I actually cut your hair once.
Yes, you did.
Yeah, in our studio.
During the pandemic.
Yeah. And so I was cutting someone's hair and in the kitchen, because I didn't have, you know, we either do it in the garage or in the wintertime it was in the kitchen, and then we'd just sweep up afterwards. But you could see into the living room, and we were watching TV, or they were playing Madden or something, PlayStation, and we had a picture frame on the top of our TV, and this was back when it was a tube TV, so, you know, it wasn't a thin
big
thing.
ass TV, yeah.
Yeah, so there was a picture frame on top of the TV, and we were looking in there, somebody was playing a video game, and the frame went, fell over, and stood right back up.
Shut the fuck up.
And I swear to you, this dude Kevin, till this day, he will tell you, that's the guy who I was cutting his hair. He was so freaked out, he pulled the cape off and just walked out of the house. He's like, I'm out of here. This is crazy. So that was kind of messed up. We were like, y'all saw that, right? And everybody did, and people were trying to think of, like, what could have caused it, blah, blah, blah. And after that point, things started getting really weird. I would go outside to take out the trash, and there was a sidewalk in our backyard, and there'd be like these they had to have been chicken bones or some sort of small animal bones with these like written out into weird, like, hieroglyphics, or that's the only word I can think of, but all the way down my back sidewalk. And I was like, what the hell is going on? So I would go in and ask my roommates. I'm like, were you guys up last night doing something? I don't know if they ordered wings or chicken from somewhere. I'm like, clean up after yourselves. And they would say, what are you talking about? We'd go outside and look. And they're just like, this is weird. Maybe a neighbor did it. I don't know. So it was crazy. We'd sweep that up. And it would happen at least once a week. I'd go outside again, and the stuff is out there. Then my roommate would see it out there, and he thought that I was fucking with him. And so we were like, this is just bizarre. So I'm trying to think of what transpired next. We had a party, and we would have lots of parties, and just a lot of people come and go. And there was one night, this girl showed up with a friend, and she walked in the house and was immediately, like, ran out the house. And I was like, what's going on? And her friend said, I don't know, let me go talk to her. She went outside, came back in and said she doesn't want to come in. She says that she's been in this house before. And I said, well, I don't recognize her. Maybe it was before we lived here. And she said, yeah, there were some Jamaicans that lived here. I went outside and I talked to her. And I said, hey, we're cool. I get it. You know, there's a lot of people you don't know in there, a lot of guys that you don't know in there. I totally understand why somebody might feel sketched out. But she was like, yeah, when I first moved to Indiana, I wanted to find some weed, and a friend of mine that I worked with told me that, you know, to call these guys. They lived here, and it was right across the street from the college that I went to, and she said she came in. There was a couple of Jamaican guys that lived there. They took her down in the basement, and there was a couple. There was like a Jamaican woman and a Jamaican man in the corner. She saw them cut a chicken's head off, take the blood, and smear and writing stuff on the wall. What? And she was just like, this is, she'd never seen it. If you see a chicken get decapitated and you're not used to it, it's a little jarring, right? Yeah. And so I was like, well, I assure you that was not us. So we're totally cool. And she says, I just refuse to do it. So the next morning, my neighbor was like, hey, man, I don't know if you know this, but like blood will show through on with a black light. I was like, oh, okay. So he had a black light at his house. He brought it over. We went down in the basement. We're walking around. We have it plugged in. And then we go over behind. There was like this little area, storage area behind like the furnace. And he shined it on the wall. And there were these like weird symbols in the black light. And I mean, look, this was back in like 2000. We didn't have cell phones, with cameras. But I swear to God, they were the same kind of symbols that were the chicken bones were laid out in the sidewalk outside. Shit. And so we were like, what the hell's going on? We went and bought a disposable camera and we took pictures of it. We'd take it to like Walmart or Meijer or something to get them developed. And they wouldn't charge us because they would not develop.
Really?
Yeah, they would just come back out completely overexposed. And we were like, what the heck is going on? So my neighbor, this is a long story, so bear with me. He was super kind of like I don't know how to describe it, but he was very animated in terms of like, he's like, oh, let's perform a seance. And I'm like, okay, dude. And so we ended up going down in my room right next to the area that was, are we doing good?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. So we ended up going down in my room and we had, this is another thing we had noticed. My room was shaped, there was like a weird, like almost like 4 foot by 8 foot, like jut out of like wall paneling. There were drop ceiling. It was a drop ceiling. So we went outside and looked at the outside of the house and we didn't understand why that corner was there. So my neighbor was like, he climbed up on a little stool and picked up the drop ceiling and climbed up and looked, and there was a walled off room, like 4 foot by 8 foot, like a closet, right?
Wow. And
it was completely empty except for a tiny little chair right in the middle of it. We all looked in there with a flashlight, and it was, I don't know what that means. It was just creepy as hell. So my buddy,
so the room was completely empty, just the chair in the middle.
Yeah, it was like it looked like an old closet had just been walled off. Somebody had put up like wall paneling, so there's no door, but it was about the size of like a walk-in closet. And I had just chalked it up to like that's how the room was designed. The weird thing is about the room too is there was a huge ledge from one side of the room to the other that had wall outlets. There was like 5 wall outlets separated by 2 feet, 2 feet, 2 feet, 2 feet. And then this is where it all comes into fruition. So my neighbor ended up bringing a Bible over and he took a candle and he cut his hand and at the time I was just like, okay, dude, whatever, I'll play along because I was kind of freaked out by some of the stuff. And I'm like, if this is going to work, then I'll try it.
Right.
But I will openly admit that at the time I was kind of like rolling my eyes, and no bullshit. After he did this, like he bled on the candle and like said some weird stuff that he could have made up or if it was legit. All I know is all the weird stuff stopped happening after that happened. I mean, it got to a point though, there was times where I'd sleep on his couch because I just didn't want to be in my house. One other story, I had stayed the night at my girlfriend's house. I came home the next morning and all my roommates were like pale as a ghost looking at me. I was like, what's the matter? And they were like, is everything okay? When did you leave? We didn't see you leave. Are you okay? And I was like, yeah, why? And they said, last night we heard you and your girlfriend get into this crazy screaming, like blood-curdling, like fight down in the basement to the point where they were like, we should call the cops. Because they thought that they said it sounded like I was murdering her.
What?
And I was like, dude, I wasn't here last night. I stayed the night at her house, and they did not believe me. They were all just looking at each other like, dude, we were going to call the cops. The only reason why we didn't is because we didn't back then we weren't a big fan of, police officers.
Right, right.
So that's the the only reason they were like, we felt like we really should have called the cops, but we wanted to talk to you about what happened first. They swear to God to this day that they heard some people fighting and screaming and like killing someone down in the basement. They all said that they were up like just sitting there listening, like in total silence, like what do we do? What do we do?
Did you guys ever do like a research on the property?
I didn't do any sort of like library research, but I did, and this story will lead into it. Last one, I promise. So we were eating at Ponderosa, my roommate and I one day. I know, right? And a table next to us, like, so from us, distance of like me to you, we were eating, and two guys were sitting over there, and they were talking. I overheard them talking about, a haunted house that they lived in. Mm-hmm. And this is where it sounds like I'm bullshitting, like this is like something you'd write in a movie. Scout's honor, 3-finger salute. I was a Boy Scout. I'm telling you the truth here. So I heard him, and I was like, hey, we lived in I'm sorry to eavesdrop. I heard you talking about a haunted house. Do you believe in that stuff? Because I think I have a haunted house now. And he was like, yeah, we had some crazy stuff happen to us. We eventually moved out. And I said, oh, and they asked me, where do I live? And I told them right across the street from Indiana University. And they were like, that's where we used to live. And I said, what was the address? And they said, I'm not going to say it out loud because I don't know if I want to give whoever owns the house right now, I don't want them to have anybody showing up at their doorstep wanting to.
Because the millions of people that listen to this podcast.
Well, you never know, right? So anyway, I told them the address, and they said that was the same address. And at that point, I'm like,
get the fuck out of
here. I look at
here.
my roommate, and I'm thinking to myself, like, did you set this up? Are you guys fucking with me? It was so weird. He was freaked out, my roommate. So I immediately called my landlord. And I didn't tell her why, because I didn't want her to freak out. But I was just like, hey, we've been getting some mail, delivered. Who's the people that lived in the house before us? And she told us their first names, and that was the dudes that we had met at Ponderosa. And I said, anything else before them? And she told me, I swear to God, she told me that the people who lived in the house before those guys was a Jamaican family.
Wow.
And at that point, I mean,
all the pieces of the puzzle are coming together. What are the chances that you randomly sit next to the people that lived in the same house prior?
That's what I'm saying. And I mean, and look, after I moved out of that house, and like I said, after the seance or whatever my neighbor did, he's a good buddy of mine, but but again, he was kind of wacky in that sense. After that happened, I'm telling you, we had no problems anymore. So I didn't move out of the house because I was just too scared. We lived there for at least a year with no problems. I just eventually decided to buy a house. The house that I bought after that house,
right,
the person who owned it died. I think died. She was an old lady, died in the house. And I was like, oh my God, no disrespect, but like, I don't know if I want to buy a house where somebody died in it. I ended up buying it, and it wasn't like she was murdered there or anything. She was old. And I never had any issues. I thought I would. And, when I'd go down in the basement, I'd run up the stairs really quick after I had to turn the light off down there, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I can honestly say, though, the house that I bought where the lady died in it, like, I'd never experienced anything paranormal. It was just that one location. And I stick with my story. Samson Simpson.
We've had some weird stuff happen here. The old building manager was such a pain in the ass. He'd always come and like harass us and bother us and knock on the door and like just let himself in the apartment and walk around.
This apartment?
Yeah. He wound up passing away in the building. And every now and then, if you go in the hallway, I'll show you that after this. If you step on the wood, like in front of my bedroom door, it makes a very distinct sound. Uh-huh. It only makes that sound when there's weight on those, floorboards, I guess you would call it.
Right.
Around 3 a.m. almost every night, we'll hear, that crack. There's one time Katie even woke me up out of a dead sleep. She's like, someone's outside of the door. And I don't know if it's true, if it's not, like if there's really someone here. But if there's someone here, it's my fucking old building manager bothering the shit out of us and walking around and seeing all the shit that I shouldn't have done in this apartment. Like change the light fixture and move everything around.
Face it, dude. He's showing up to watch you jerk off.
Probably. Dude, we're running out of batteries and stuff.
Okay.
I fucking love you. Thank you so much for coming in.
Feelings mutual.
Thank you for all of this and helping up and letting me borrow these extra cameras and getting shit right. we have the last guest I had on here, Dr. Danielle Reese, wants to do a ghost hunt in San Diego. I'm going to try to schedule that and see if we can possibly get that done. If you want to come along, and we'll fucking make a small little documentary.
That's an
about
example of something that I would do for free.
Let's fucking do that.
Yeah,
I'm
let's do
still,
that.
dude. Thank you very much.
Thanks
love
for
you.
having me, buddy.
This ends this show. That's it for this transmission. We're out.